The price of eggs continue to soar as the bird flu cases wreak havoc on supplies in the U.S.
Yeah, in January, eggs cost about $6 a dozen, but today, a dozen eggs will cost you about $8.47.
This year,
egg prices are soaring in the United States and shelves are empty. A devastating bird flu outbreak continues to ravage poultry farms across
the economy and to a troubling new forecast when it comes to the price of eggs, now predicted to rise more than 40% this year.
In supermarkets across the Midwest, shoppers froze in confusion as the price of a simple carton of eggs climbed close to $5. But it wasn't the number on the tag that left them unsettled. It was a label. Beneath a bright logo, the words read, "Product of Brazil, packed in Turkey." Meanwhile, American eggs sat untouched in warehouses, piling up by the millions. A policy meant to protect local farmers had instead turned on them, trapping entire communities in losses they never imagined. Across rural towns, barns are filling faster than they can empty, and what was once a dependable livelihood now feels like a countdown to collapse. The shock deepened when Canada, one of America's largest egg buyers, abruptly canceled a deal worth over 170 million dozen eggs. For many family-run farms, that single move wiped out months of expected income. Generations that had built their lives around steady agricultural work were left wondering how everything had gone wrong. Yet this crisis didn't begin with a dramatic event. It crept in quietly, almost unseen, as confusion spread through grocery aisle from Dallas to Cleveland. Shoppers stared at price tags that no longer made sense. Nearly $5 for a dozen eggs that had once cost less than $2. A staple of everyday life had become a symbol of deeper economic disorder. For decades, American eggs represented stability and pride. They traveled smoothly across borders to trusted markets in Canada, Japan, and throughout Asia, feeding both families and the image of U.S. agricultural strength. In 2024 alone, the United States exported nearly 172 million dozen eggs, proof of a system that seemed unshakable. But by mid-2025, that confidence began to unravel. A devastating avian flu outbreak swept through major poultry regions, forcing farms to destroy over 38 million hens. Production plummeted, costs surged, and global buyers began to look elsewhere. Yet even this biological disaster might have been survivable if not for the policy shift that followed in an attempt to shield American farmers from foreign competition. The Trump administration introduced a new round of agricultural tariffs. The goal was to boost local production and strengthen domestic markets. Instead, it backfired. Trade partners bristled at the move, seeing it as protectionism in disguise. Canada, long one of America's most reliable customers, quietly canceled massive contracts and turned to Brazil and the European Union for supply. The withdrawal didn't make front-page news. It happened in boardrooms and through quiet negotiations that redrew the global egg trade. By summer, the United States had built up a surplus of more than 60 million eggs with no destination in sight. The ripple effects have been severe. In Iowa, Indiana, and Pennsylvania, the backbone of U.S. egg farming, warehouses are overflowing. Facilities designed to store perishable goods for a few weeks are now crammed for months, with shelves stacked to the ceiling. The economic toll has been immediate. Prices at the farm level have collapsed, forcing many small and mid-sized operations to shut down entirely. Larger farms have scaled back production, but even they are struggling to manage the cost of storage and transportation. The National Egg Producers Association reported that in the second quarter of 2025 alone, 64 small and medium farms disappeared from the market. Nearly half were family-owned, passed down through generations that had once seen agriculture as a steady and honorable path. Barns that used to echo with the noise of thousands of hens now sit silent. Local markets that once bustled with vendors are shrinking fast. The few who remain are selling eggs for as little as 60 or 70 cents per dozen, barely enough to cover the cost of feed, labor, and electricity. Yet at major grocery chains, the price remains stuck between $4 and $5. The disconnect isn't about greed or manipulation. It's a result of a system jammed at nearly every level. Eggs can't move freely through distribution networks. Transport routes face backlogs, inspections stall exports, and regulatory delays pile up. The paradox is striking. Millions of eggs sit idle in warehouses while consumers continue paying record prices. This strange paralysis, abundance and shortage existing side by side, has turned the industry upside down. Farmers lose money with every crate that stays unsold, while shoppers lose patience each time they face inflated costs at the checkout counter. The economic damage extends well beyond the farms. Packing plants, logistics companies, and food processors that rely on egg product for bakeries, restaurants, and packaged goods are cutting shifts or halting production altogether. The once seamless chain that connected rural supply to urban demand has started to fracture. Nowhere is a collapse more visible than in Iowa, the beating heart of the U.S. egg industry. More than 12 million dozen eggs have been stuck in cold storage in less than 3 months. Facilities meant for temporary preservation are under strain, and much of the product risks expiration before ever reaching consumers. Reports from the Department of Agriculture show similar patterns across Indiana, Ohio, Missouri, and Minnesota, each recording surpluses 2 to 3 times higher than the previous year. Every extra day in storage adds cost while eroding farmer income. The math no longer works that on paper. The United States still ranks among the world's top agricultural producers. But behind those numbers lies a grim reality: warehouses full of unsold stock, unpaid bills, and empty barns. Farmers are caught between policies that promise protection and markets that punish them for it. What was meant to be a safety net has become a trap. The deeper issue is trust. Trust between farmers and the government, producers and buyers, exporters and their foreign partners. Once that trust is broken, rebuilding it takes far longer than a single harvest cycle. The psychological toll is just as severe. In towns where farming isn't just a job but an identity, families are questioning whether to continue at all. Some are selling land that has been in their name for generations. Others are taking on debt to survive one more season, unsure if buyers will return or prices will ever normalize. The optimism that once defined America's agricultural heartland is fading into quiet resignation. Many farmers say they no longer believe their effort guarantees reward, a dangerous shift for a sector that relies on faith in future stability. Even state officials are sounding alarms. In Nebraska, the Agricultural Board reported that 17% of farmers have postponed or abandoned expansion plans for the 2026 season, the steepest decline in over a decade. It's not a lack of work ethic that holds them back, but a sense of futility. They see the system grinding against them rather than working for them. Every crate of unsold eggs is a reminder that policy decisions made in distant offices can devastate those who live closest to the land. The crisis in America's egg industry is no longer about one product or one sector. It's a reflection of a larger imbalance between intention and outcome, between abundance and accessibility, between national policy and local survival. What was supposed to strengthen farmers has instead left them isolated in a market they no longer recognize. And unless those lines of trade and trust are repaired soon, the bonds of the Midwest may remain full. But the future they represent will stand empty. Markets across the United States have grown unstable, and trade relationships that took decades to build are now vanishing in May months. Farmers who once saw their work as a dependable way of life are watching that stability slip away, often in silence. At grocery stores, prices remain stubbornly high, deepening public frustration. Between April and June of 2025, the average price of a dozen eggs at major chains like Walmart, Kroger, and Safeway range between $3.80 and $5, depending on the region, one of the highest levels in 15 years, behind only the bird flu crisis of 2022 and the inflation surge of 2023. Yet it isn't just the price that disturbs shoppers. It's the contradiction behind it. Consumers hear about farmers destroying millions of unsold eggs, see headlines about Canada canceling U.S. imports, and then walk into stores lined with foreign-labeled cartons. The situation seems impossible to make sense of. A recent survey from Purdue University found that nearly 70% of Midwestern residents had no clear understanding of why this was happening. More than half said it made no sense that American eggs were being discarded while families were paying inflated prices at home. This widespread confusion has bred resentment, not only toward trade policy, but toward the entire agricultural system. Many Americans feel betrayed by the very institutions that were supposed to protect them. They pay taxes to support agricultural programs, yet find themselves unable to afford one of the most basic foods on their table. Online, that frustration spills over into social media and local community forums, where retirees, small farmers, and former industry workers share stories of hardship. The same question keeps appearing. Why is the United States importing eggs while its own farmers are forced to destroy their stock? One Ohio resident described how their supermarket sold Brazilian eggs for nearly $5 a dozen while a nearby farm, just 10 miles away, shut down from oversupply. Similar stories have surfaced in dozens of states, documented by the nonprofit group Consumer Voices. Each account adds to a larger story of economic imbalance and fading faith in America's agricultural backbone. For many, the crisis feels deeply personal. It strikes at the very heart of what people believed about national self-reliance. The idea that America could always feed itself was a cornerstone of its identity. Seeing that unravel while imported goods fill store shelves has left entire communities questioning what happened to that promise. Older farmers call this a turning point. They speak of trucks unloading foreign eggs while domestic ones rot in storage, describing it as a loss that goes beyond dollars and cents. It's a loss of dignity, of continuity, a belief that hard work guarantees reward. Generations that once took pride in feeding the country now feel abandoned by it. The emotional toll is visible in the quiet anger spreading across rural America. For those who have worked the same land for decades, this moment feels like watching the country turn away from the values that built it. Beneath these personal stories lies an industry trapped in a cycle it cannot escape. Policies designed to protect American agriculture have instead weakened it. Tariffs that were meant to defend local production pushed foreign partners away. Trust that once anchored trade relationships has frayed. At home, the bond between producers and consumers, the simple logic that what's grown in America should serve Americans, has broken down. Every link in the chain, from barns to distribution networks to checkout counters, is straining under the pressure. The problem is no longer just about eggs. It's about what they represent, a system built to sustain itself that no longer seems capable of doing so. American agriculture, once the foundation of national security and economic strength, now faces deep uncertainty about its ability to adapt to a shifting global economy. Farmers are unsure if international buyers will ever return. Consumers question whether prices will stabilize. And policymakers are confronting the uncomfortable truth that protectionist policies can create unintended harm far beyond their original goals. The impact reaches into daily life in quiet but significant ways. Across the country, kitchen habits are changing. Families who once started mornings with scrambled eggs or weekend breakfast with omelets are cutting back. For many living paycheck to paycheck, eggs have quietly become a luxury. Feeding America reports that the number of households eating eggs only once a week has jumped by more than 10% in a single year. In states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Arizona, the divide is widening. Warehouses overflow with unsold cartons while dinner tables grow emptier. What used to be one of the simplest, most reliable foods in America now reflects something much larger about the nation's growing instability.